welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. Tehami. In the recent past, Pakistan had been faced with some economic difficulties, and these difficulties were exacerbated after the floods of summer 2022. The Pakistan Democratic Movement government had to take some difficult decisions in order to steer the country out of the difficult economic times. It reached a standby agreement with the IMF for 9 months of $3 billion. Also, for the revival of the country's economy, the PDM government, under the supervision of former Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, established a special investment facilitation council and also launched a Green Pakistan initiative. It also went on with some reforms in the power sector in particular. Now we have seen the caretaker Prime Minister, Mr. Anwarul Haq Kakar, has chaired a meeting regarding the economic situation in the country, and he has vowed to continue with the policies of the previous government, which was led by former Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. The caretaker Prime Minister has also directed the officials to expedite ongoing reforms in the power sector in particular, and has also directed them to strictly implement measures to increase the tax revenue. The caretaker Prime Minister has also said that the further enhancement of the foreign direct investment through the Special Investment Facilitation Council was one of the top priorities of his government. Also, in other news, we have seen the value of Pakistani rupee depreciating against the greenback, and in today's program we'll try to understand the reasons associated with the depreciation of the value of rupee, and also what sort of challenges the caretaker government has regarding the economic front, and what are the recommendations in that particular regard. To understand that, we are honored to have been joined by an esteemed panel of guests in the studio. Mr. Faad Waheed, he is Senior Vice President, Islamabad Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Faad, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us. And Dr. Manzoor Ahmad, a trade arbitrator, World Trade Organization. Dr. Manzoor Ahmad, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Manzoor. Now, when we talk about the depreciation of rupee's value against the greenback, what core reasons do you think are associated with that? Is it because of the restrictions which were imposed on the imports were lifted and there was more demand of the foreign currency?
Well, that could also be true. But when there is uncertainty, you know, there was this change happening. And fortunately, it worked out well. I mean, it was by consensus, and they were generally positively received. So I think things should stabilize soon. And I mean, as you explained in your introductory comments, we had a rather difficult, you know, previously it's 18 months. It was many things. It was the floods, and it was the Ukraine war, and it was many other uncertainty, and IMF uncertainty took us, you know, many months. So all those things were there. Now, fortunately, I should say that we are moving past these things. You know, the IMF deal is done, and investment has already started. They've already started signing these agreements, and something like $25 billion are expected to come in. CPEC is, you know, almost revived. And the good thing that you mentioned here in your introductory comments is that the caretaker government has, you know, kind of indicated that they would like to continue the policy. That has been a big problem in Pakistan. Whenever the government changed, everything upside down. Now, at least they've agreed that they will continue with that.
So how crucial is that continuity of the policies? The major steps which have been taken by the previous government, the government just leaving the power and taken over with the caretaker government, how important is to continue with those policies, especially when there was a launch of Green Pakistan initiative to have more agricultural productivity and enhance the agri-exports, and also facilitating the foreign investors to bring in foreign direct investment through the Special Investment Facilitation Council?
You see, it's very, continuity is very important. First of all, you know, when IMF this time, this standby loan, it was in 3 installments. One was already given, but the second depends on on this government. So it's very important that they don't go back on some populist steps. You know, they have to, you know, like currency or anything, they don't do anything artificial. It was tried previously even, you know, it didn't work. So they have to stay on to this IMF program. And then all this investment coming and this setting up a facilitation council, I think what decisions, I think they're already taking quick decisions. They've done so, and I hope they continue it in the future.
Right, Mr. Faad, what's your understanding? What core reasons do you think are associated with the depreciation of PKR's value against the greenback? Is it because of the more demand of the foreign currency as the restrictions on certain imports were lifted?
Yeah, see, there are certain things that happened in the past 2 years with Pakistan. So one of them was, you know, not being importing a lot of stuff that we needed. And since we are an import-dependent country, we always needed the greenback. So now that the LCs are opening and, you know, there's dollars in the market to trade with, so definitely that use is coming out, and everybody's now, you know, they're going back into the game and they're making the right choices again. You know, they're still importing. So we still have to understand we did stop the imports, but we are back on it again. So we need to curb that start. So that is one place where we are depreciating the rupee against the dollar. And the other part, which has been a little uncertainty, you know, since the government dissolving of this government and coming of the interim government, this has created little uncertainty in the exporter world. So what I'm hearing, the chatter I'm hearing in the past 10 days is that the exporter is not actually encashing the dollars he has in his account. And he's not actually bringing in money because he still thinks and he's still assuming that, you know, the dollar is going to appreciate over the rupee. So that is one very big problem that we're going to face in the near future.
Why uncertainty? Because it was pretty much written on the wall after, during this transition, a caretaker setup takes the place of the previous government, and it ensures the fair and impartial elections in the future. That is pretty much a writing on the wall. So why does this transition carry an uncertainty?
See, there are always players in the market that have their own speculations, they have their own style of working. So that's the speculation they had. But you know, with this interim government coming in and Mr. Anwarul Haq coming as the Prime Minister, 8th Prime Minister of Pakistan in the interim setup, you know, this created a little betterment, and you know, it was a little more harmonious than I would say, and it did not raise a lot of red flags for people around. But actually, it's a welcoming decision at this point, and I think this is something that is going to stabilize this. But we saw today that, you know, rupee again depreciated against the greenback, and we don't hope that it goes again like this, because the SIFC, as he has mentioned today, the Prime Minister, that, you know, he's still going to continue the steps that the previous government has taken. And we have to understand, we really have to, you know, understand that this standby loan is a 9-month agreement. So it's going to be transitioned between 3 governments. The government that has left the podium, the government, the Prime Minister caretaker, and the government that's going to be elected. So 9 months of processes, we really need sustainability. And I think this is the most bold and ambitious step that the Prime Minister has taken, that he's going to continue on the same lines that the previous government has done. And so that will actually reaffirm and confirm the, you know, the apprehensions the IMF would have or the other lenders would have, but that would reconfirm that, you know, we're going towards stability and sustainability.
Right, Dr. Manzoor, why uncertainty in the market? Because it's pretty much a writing on the wall during the transition period from one government, from one elected government to the another elected government, a caretaker setup comes in.
You see, when there is, say, one government election to another government, kind of people know, you know, if it's a normal political government, you know, who is going to be the Prime Minister, what kind of team they're going to bring. Here, there are lots of unknowns. We still don't know about the cabinet, who's going to come. So all these signals are they're waiting for. But I personally feel that this is a temporary, as Faad is just saying, that now the activity is starting. So people are opening up LCs, they should come. So you see, previously we got this stability, but at a high cost. There was no growth. You know, it was less than 0.5%, 0.3%. At that growth means negative growth, because without population growing. So we need to move the economy forward. So a little bit this exchange rate, etc., may happen, but the economy has to grow.
So what about that IMF condition, which is put the gap between the open market and interbank to be not more than 1.25% for any 5 consecutive business days? What does that particularly mean? How does it actually work?
It just means that the government will not fix that this is, like, for example, I shouldn't say his name, but Mr. Dyer was always giving some hint, okay, the dollar should not be more than 240 or something like that.
We know there was an earlier cap imposed, and it was
this
later
is
on
more,
lifted.
now that the dollar, they're letting it find its value. So that IMF condition, that don't hold it artificially, that doesn't apply now.
Right, Mr. Faad, what does it mean to you, this particular condition of International Monetary Fund of keeping the gap between the open market and interbank around 1.25% for the 5 consecutive business days?
This is actually something very good, because if dollar is going to find its way in its own place and its own value, that is going to create the real demand, the real supply of the market. And if that maintains, as my friend has mentioned here, if that maintains, automatically we will find growth. And once we find growth, because then these other players that are manipulating the rupee against the dollar or the dollar against the rupee, they're going to be eliminated in this war. Because that's what you've seen in the past 1.5 years, that the parity between the open market and the interbank was more than 1.25%. So I think this is something that's going to bring more control, and we're going to have a certain procedure, and we're going to understand that dollar predictions are going to be right, and the businessman, especially the importer of Pakistan, he's not going to suffer in this.
Right, Dr. Manzoor, the caretaker Prime Minister has also directed the officials to implement those measures to have more tax collection. We have seen in the last fiscal year the performance of the FBR. It was around what the target was already set. Against a target of 621 billion rupees, FBR was able to collect around 572 billion net revenue, with the refunds of $33 billion were also issued. First of all, give us an understanding of the FBR's performance previously, and the kind of target this time around in this fiscal year budget has been set. What measures do you think are needed to be implemented in order to have that smooth intake of the taxes?
You see, frankly, I worked in FBR for several years, so I know that when the economy is growing, automatically the tax is growing. I worked in 2001, 2, 3, etc., and the economy was going up, so the taxes collection was going up. So if the economy is stagnant and we try to extract taxes, that really hurts the business, because they're already in difficulty. On top of it, the taxman is doing these raids, etc., and raising these demands, and that really hurts the economy. So unfortunately, for the last few years, one of the things IMF has been stressing is far beyond the capacity. Without looking at how much the economy is going to go up, they say make 30% more. It doesn't happen. So they go back, they revise it down. That's not the right way to do. I mean,
so what's the right way to do it?
The right way to do is that let the economy flourish. It happened with many countries when they came in this kind of difficulty. First thing they did was let the economy grow. And economy growing means that your industry takes off. That means your exports are going up. Because our worst problem is stagnancy of exports. So we have to do everything, not through subsidies, but through maybe letting level playing field. We just allow one industry to get everything, their raw material free, their machinery free, and others, no, we have another. So that's not right. I mean, we should provide a level playing field and let the businessmen struggle. If somebody is producing machinery parts, or somebody is shirts or anything, or maybe solar panel, whatever. You see, and that's not the case now. So hopefully they can do some of these. I think one of the things this caretaker government could do is do some this homework as to how to, so that the next government comes. For example, our taxation rates, they could already do the analysis as to what will happen if they bring down this tariff or increase that or a level playing field, and make things simpler. It's too complex at present. So this is without hurting the revenue, etc. They can already do it. In 2-3 months, they can really simplify our income tax regime, our custom duty, our sales tax, because at present they are very complex.
Right now, anyway, at the end of the day, when we talk about this federal year's budget, there is a target that has been set by FPR around 9.2 trillion rupees. Now, what measures do you think are required in order to achieve at least that target?
One thing they should not do is raise further taxes, because for example, my background in customs, and any time we go beyond a certain limit, all that moves to smuggling. You know, it comes in any way. Government loses the money, so they're smuggling, and so they should bring down the tariffs so that more people come in the you know, normal economy rather than the gray economy. So raising tax rate, we have the sales tax rate is the highest in the region. Custom duty, they analyzed that after 70 countries, you know, they analyzed, Pakistan had the highest. So there's something wrong with this policy. This should not continue.
So how could it be viable reducing the taxes?
No, it's always viable because
when the IMF has put such strict conditions that it continues to push the authorities to collect more taxes.
You see, it's always possible, because even at that time, I remember, you know, previously we had history, we did the reforms, we brought down taxes. Where, for example, custom duty was 45% around there, and it was brought down within 2 years to 25%. Our taxes actually went up many times. So, but what they can do is, especially in the income tax, they have all the data. They can use it. IT, that's the thing to do. And then there are many ways to hide money laundering, I should say. For example, like agriculture, everybody buys some land and tries to show his land income. But, you know, they can put a stop to these practices, and the tax will grow.
Right, I'll come to this point to discuss it a little in the show. Mr. Faad, what's your understanding of the performance previously of the FPR's tax collection regarding this target, which had already been set around 620, and they got a phenomenal recovery regarding that?
See, last year was a little different year, and it was unprecedented, and you know, it was unseen for anyone. And Pakistan, the businessmen of Pakistan handled it the way, you know, they thought, you know, it's a one-time investment, we're going to invest into Pakistan and everything's going to be fine by the year. But the target setting of 9.2 trillion was really ambitious with the growth of 0.5%. It was really ambitious. I don't know how they're going to do it, because the problem that has been lingering in Pakistan's FPR is that, you know, broadening the tax net. We have actually not looked at that. You know, it's still the 3 million people who are paying all the taxes, but the target is now what, 35% more. So those same people are not going to pay that 35%. They're going to shy away from taxing. So that's where, you know, as my friend has mentioned, we have to understand and we have to implement the new style of using IT, using technology against the same people who are not paying taxes. We have to actually, you know, insert those guys into the same tax net that everybody is. And on the contrary, as it was being discussed, that, you know, how do you collect more money if you're lowering the taxes? And that is, you know, by different means of taxation. If you lower tax, the sale tax of, you know, let's say an X commodity, or, you know, sale tax of everything by 2%, you might, you know, be able to make more money than you've been already doing. And that has similarly happened in the income tax of rental economy of Pakistan. You know, the taxation of rental is about 30 to 40% at this point, variable, but 35 to 40%. And in the past 4 or 5 years, we have seen a decline in, you know, people registering for income tax and rental income. So if that's a little lower, people are going to be more encouraged, because that is not adjustable. So if you make that adjustable at the end of the year, people are going to be, you know, it's just a deposit that they're giving to the FPR, but then you don't get any refunds. So we have to really understand, you know, it's not just the dynamics that have stopped us, it's actually our own implementation of these workings. We do have laws in place, we have everything in place, but it's not that, you know, we're going to do more all the time. You know, we're doing more for the past 20 years now. So everybody's going to be tired.
So how do you think it's doable for the authorities in Pakistan to reduce taxes when the IMF is putting such a strict condition?
No, I don't advocate, lowering taxes at this point. I just say, we have to understand to broaden the tax net. Lowering taxes is not going to help Pakistan, because right now we are in a program with IMF. We have to understand the situation, and we have to keep par with whatever they have, required from us. But at the same time, we have to understand, we have to make sure that, we are actually extending our own net and bringing in more people to be taxed. If we're going to be taxing the same 3 million people all the time, it's not far away that, next year if we go into another program of IMF, we might not survive that.
So what possible ideal measures do you recommend could be adopted in order to broaden that?
Well, at this point, what I was discussing today, and I'm going to, that's one area that I see Pakistan can get more taxation out is, we really need to promote our ongoing projects like CPEC and the new project that has come is SIFC. So both these projects need to be really, looked after, and they have to be treated like a baby at this point. They're not going to flourish by themselves. If we understand that CPEC had, all these industrial zones on the sidelines of the roads, we have to understand that only Chinese investor got the tax holidays on those. So if Pakistani investor would get something out of it, Pakistan would get more benefit, because those will be the local investors. But now that we don't have confidence from the international community for the past 1.5 years, and I think this year is going to be different, but those are the people that are going to make a change. So we have to bring more exemptions for Pakistani businessmen at this point to make sure our industry takes off. Our industry has taken the hit of the past 5 years. All the dirt that has been unearthed is because of the industry. And it's only the industry that has taken the hit. So we have to understand that dollar is one thing, the USD is one thing that we really need to contain. And I think that is the biggest challenge this government is going to face. They have to understand that we are import dependent. We have to come out of the stagnancy of our exports. At the same time, we have to attract more foreign direct investment and make sure the taxpayers of Pakistan are happy with the taxation authorities. So if that harmony kicks in, that's the only thing, that's the only way out, I think, this ambitious goal of 9.2 trillion.
So do you think the caretaker is going to be more in position, it is going to use that leverage in order to bring all those sectors into the, for broadening the tax base, for example, the agriculture or the real estate sector? Do you think that leverage goes with the caretaker government more as compared to the elected government?
No, it does with the interim government, yes. And he has been empowered more as far as our previous interim caretaker prime ministers have been, because there's a slight problem that, we are in an IMF program at this point. So this prime minister, he has more services, he has extracurricular, added to his CV now, that he has to take care of more, and he's not just going to be taking care of day-to-day affairs, he can actually make economic decisions. So I think for him, it's a golden chance for 6 months to make sure, he's going to do things. I say 6 months because, that's what I see, that, election is going to be another 6 months. So he has this time period, because we have to, all the constituencies have to be revived, and they're going to redesign everything. So I think, it's going to be 6 months, but even if he takes about 4, I think he really has to, stick to his job and, be ambitious and, work throughout it.
The conduct of elections basically depends upon the new delimitations also,
Yes.
which would be definitely based on the new census also. What's your understanding, Dr. Manzoor? Do you think this current caretaker setup is going to have more force and power when it comes to broadening the tax base, especially bringing in all those sectors like the agriculture and real estate sectors?
Well, frankly, on agriculture, it will not be possible for caretaker. I mean, it has not been possible even for the other governments to put tax. So, because there's constitutional things, is it a provincial subject, the federal government, how do that? But what, for example, we have seen amongst the caretakers, for example, when Moin Qureshi came, the first one, he really widened the tax net. He published the lists of taxpayers to shame people, the parliamentarians who are not paying their tax. Then he cut some expenditure, but above all, he put on all the key places competent people, and that. So And some others came, maybe they were nice gentlemen people, but they were mostly didn't go for any reforms. And Mr. Kakar is a young man. I think he has got ideas, so he can do that. On the tax net, I thought there was, whenever FBR publishes these exemptions list, so many institutions are exempt from tax, so many, others. And some of the just political pressures, and they've agreed, and they could cut that down. And one other thing, I don't think IMF really insists that you keep these high rates. They say that your overall tax should be this level, whatever the 9 trillion, that figure you gave. But about the tax rate, I think they're flexible. But what they do say is that don't just give one person this exemption and another person this, and don't do that. Just keep a level playing field.
Right, Dr. Manzoor, now caretaker Prime Minister has also mentioned regarding continuing with the reforms in the power sector in particular. When we talk about the circular debt in this particular sector that has risen to around 2.31 trillion rupees by the end of June, what prime reasons are associated with such a circular debt in the power sector in particular?
Well, the main reason for power sector losses is, one is theft, obviously, and the other is that some distribution companies, well known that they don't even collect 30% of the total. There's some who do a good job, but so they have to do. Maybe they could involve. For example, there's more likely with the Quetta, Peshawar, and Hyderabad. They involve the provincial governments with it, so that they have more. They can assert themselves more. And then I think
Assert
this.
in what sense? When you talk about the main reasons, the power line losses and the electricity theft, how the authorities can assert in order to deal with these two primary issues?
One was this distribution system was frankly quite old, so the actually they were actual losses, and I think they put too much emphasis on generation of electricity, but not enough on distribution. So they need to put a little more on that side, so that they modernize these distribution system. That's one thing, and I think another reason, there are some technical reasons as well. For example, whatever NEPRA says that this should be the recovery rate, and these companies, sometimes it's just impossible to have 90% recovery. And they make that theoretically that goes into the circular debt, because they say, okay, we told you 10%, how come it was 17%? They have to be more realistic. I think they have to find a way on this.
Right, Mr. Faad, what's your understanding of this amount of circular debt, particularly of the power sector, 2.31 trillion rupees?
See, it's staggering, and it's been like that for the past years, and really and truly, if we keep talking about it, and we have been, it doesn't really, I don't think people have actually looked at it. They just think it's something that we're going to have forever, and it's something it's going to kill the entire nation down. Because see, this circular debt is not just building up on the nation; it's a burden on every person being born in Pakistan. We have to actually take these measures and strike it down. As my friend is saying, that we have to understand what NEPRA is doing and what the DISCOs are doing. If the distribution and the authority of distribution are not being on the same page for the past years, we have to understand what's the disconnect. And once we bring it to connect, that's going to be something. On the other part, the biggest problem we have faced, and what I have thought and what I have heard about, is political decisions. Sometimes if DISCO takes a decision against someone to cut down the electricity for exorbitant losses or theft, there's going to be a political problem, and somebody's going to step in and be like, okay, let's fix this out, let it be. So that's where we have to draw the line, that there's nothing and no one going to be above Pakistan. Everybody is going to be below that line of the law, and the land of the law is going to prevail. So that is one part. The other part, how do we bring back this entire volume, is there's another mechanism that NEPRA can uphold, and I have been working with them on it. It's the prepaid meters. if there's a place and if there's an area where there's a lot of line losses, they can actually implement this. And this is actually doable. It has been done in the West, it has been done in the East, and in Pakistan, I think, if we don't get out of this circular debt, I think they definitely they'll have to do it with the discos that have less than, I would say 70% of the recovery. So even 50%. That is one thing. Now we have to understand what are we doing as Pakistanis, as the general people of Pakistan. We're not really understanding the cost of electricity we're getting it at. Solar, one part, everybody's now solarization. There's solarization going on in Pakistan everywhere, wherever I see, especially in the skyline of Islamabad, you'll see a lot of houses on solar. Now industry is also shifting on solar, but we are importing all the solar equipment. We don't have a single factory in Islamabad or Pakistan that's manufacturing solar plants. So our government actually needs to look at that. We actually have this gap of trust and mistrust between the government and the investor of Pakistan who want to come up with bringing in solar manufacturing into Pakistan. So this gap has to be actually filled as well. And next thing I'm hearing is, the previous government that just stepped down, they actually took a step that they're going to solarize all the government offices, which is a very...
The 4 phases of that
Yes.
have already been completed.
Yes, so that we're still, I'm still yet to see, Islamabad offices to be filled, but I haven't seen those. So I hope, it's somewhere down the lane and, they've been doing those.
So how much do you associate Pakistan's reliance on expensive imported fuels with this amount of circular debt?
Well, at this point, because we have a capacity of generation, we don't have the capacity of spending it and being on a stable part. See, if we don't have these line losses, we have the capacity of actually producing more than what we use in Pakistan, as per the reports of NEPRA. So if we understand that and the circular debt does not come down, we will really have to knock it down with this, especially with this government, the interim government, because see, they don't have to have any kind of political display or they don't have to have any kind of political stunt at this point. I think they really need to work for Pakistan and for the sake of Pakistan only. So in that, and that would actually, mean drawing the swords out.
What's required to bring in solar panels manufacturing or renewables related to wind or solar or any other
We have to bring policies in place in the first place. We have to bring policies that whoever is going to manufacture those, whatever the investor is going to come in, he's not going to be surprised by new taxes. Next year is going to be in manufacturing phases. So that is one part. He needs security of his international funds. And that's where I think and I hope SIFC is going to play a positive role and a very aggressive role in this. That if we actually get someone or maybe the Chinese to come in and manufacture those plants here, we're going to save a lot of dollars going out of the country in the name of renewable, bringing in renewable, because there's no taxation on it. Mind you, that is something, it's going to hurt Pakistan because we're going to be sending dollars out to bring in this equipment, but we're not going to be taxing those. So there's going to be no custom duties, there's going to be nothing on it, but we're going to be importing that equipment. The other thing we have to understand is our local discos, NEPRA has not changed their buying rate of solar unit, whereas the unit of electricity today is almost 55 rupees and they're still buying on 19 rupees. So that parity is also a very discouraging factor for the people of Pakistan to put up solar in their houses. So that is something we really have to look into, and the parity has to maintain somehow.
Right, Dr. Manzoor Ahmad, what's your understanding of bringing in solar panels manufacturing in Pakistan?
Well, I think we have to be rather careful because the many countries have tried it and somehow they've not succeeded really. I mean, it's still China is producing 80% of solar panels and all Europe combined 5% of solar, because if the solar panel, whatever the cost we get from China, and here suddenly by putting industry, the cost goes up 3 times. Like, just give you an example of this mobile phones recently. So there was a lot of this thing that we are spending so many billions on this, and let's set this units here, and we'll be saving foreign exchange. No saving, because everything is coming from outside. It's just assembled, but the cost for the consumer has gone up at least double.
Yes.
At least double. So we should be careful that it's not that whatever the cost now, so it will become extremely probative. So we have to avoid that and do the cost analysis. Maybe my friend here in business, he would know it better. But one other thing about this, the point you were making about cutting down losses, we already have expedited this privatization. We just outsourced Islamabad airport for whatever 15 years. Karachi port, some berths have been done. So they can bring in privatization. Yeah, privatization always works. For example, this K Electric, no matter it didn't quite go the way they expected, but still the subsidies are much less. What the only subsidies are, if the government asks them that okay, you give to this, you give so much electricity under cost, I don't charge this. That's the only subsidy. Or maybe say Karachi water supply, they won't pay any. They get the electricity, and billions, but no. So that's the only subsidy. Otherwise, don't. But like Shanghai Electric has been offering, almost cost and plus additional investment up to 10 billion. But it's been taken years and years, and we have not been able to do it. So I think privatization, especially of those discos, what they call it, these distribution companies, which are running into serious losses, they should get rid of them and privatize. Maybe the local people plus the foreigners, they can buy these things.
What's your view on the idea of having paid meters, as Mr.
Oh, that's a very good idea. That's a very, very good idea. I wish somehow it would work, because when these paid meters or anything is handed to a government department, unfortunately, so they charge a premium on that. So if it is given to some private, you see with solar what happened, whatever their charge, say it's 30,000 rupees, you pay another 10,000 to then another 10,000 if you want it even further quicker. So that is wrong. I mean, it should not be. If this is a good idea, but implementation should be proper.
But don't you think it will require a lot of resources for a complete revamp?
No, but
for bringing in the prepaid meters all across.
Yes, but anything which brings more efficiency, more productivity. It doesn't matter. You have to spend something. For example, if I buy a car, and I buy a hybrid car, maybe it's a little more expensive, but it saves me a lot of time, etc. So these imports, etc., the whole world, this imports and exports, they take place. But if it saves us so much electricity, the circular dirt in trillions, so why not do it? We are importing lots of other things. So it doesn't really matter if a few billions on machinery, etc.
I'm going to add that a little bit. As per my research on this, on the prepaid meters, it's actually, we don't have to use a lot of resources. It's a flip of a switch as per NEPRA. It's already there. The meters we are using in our houses is already equipped with it. They just have to, do some IT thing, and it's going to be there. So let's just say, even if it's done phase-wise and it takes up to 3 months, I'm going to quote an example here. It's just like our own car. You go to a gas station, you fill up your car, and that's prepaid petrol that you're getting, and once you're done with it, you go back to the pump. So that's going to happen in Pakistan, especially and if we quote another example of a car, it's going to be electric vehicle. So similarly charging it and using at the same extent.
Now talking about the circular debt in the gas sector in particular, it's around $1.6 trillion. The reasons associated with that, how to deal with that?
Infrastructure. We really haven't worked on our infrastructure. We have charged a lot of charges in especially the gas sector. GIDC was one of the charges, that closed down an entire sector of CNG, the compressed natural gases. There was a charge called in CES, they were taking this for infrastructure CES to develop that infrastructure, but they did take out the money, but never being used. We didn't see it anywhere. So, our infrastructure actually is very old. Even in the electricity part, we have to really upgrade those, and we have to similarly understand the fact, even in these conditions, in this weather, you don't get gas in especially residential areas in Islamabad today. So, it's really disheartening to understand that we are actually producers of this gas, and we're not really being able to relate to the real customers. So not being able to do that is also a problem, and charging exorbitant fees of such services which are not really provided 24 hours, and that's a basic necessity. That is a big problem.
How to deal with that when we talk about the plan by the previous government that just stepped out? There was a proposed plan of a mix of non-cash book adjustments and tariff rationalization. What does that mean to you?
See, this is the first time they're going to try this out, the tariff part. They have done the non-cash, changes, but that hasn't really worked. But the tariff that they're going to work is a new way. And recently, I heard they allowed the private sector to actually import gas and put it into the system. And then again, that private, disco, I would say at this point, they're going to be responsible of those. See, we have to understand the government has to come out of doing business. Our government, especially Pakistani government, has to come out of doing business. We already have a lot of state-owned enterprises that are, creating losses every year in our financial budget. So that is one place. Another, I would say, Pakistan really needs to come out of this, and we have to go towards privatization in this. I don't see any way of recommending something on the gas, especially. That was something we were king of. So coming down from that line, I really don't see a way out, or any kind of suggestion on that. I would just say, it's just bad governance. We really have to get rid of that. We have to understand. We have to go towards privatization in that area.
Dr. Manzoor, your understanding of this circular direct in gas sector?
Gas, yeah, it's very unfortunate because just a few years ago we didn't have in the gas sector. We had it in electricity for 4 years, but not here. Again, this was not because we knew that our domestic gas is going down, the reserves are going down, and we have to import it. And the government, when this started importing this RLNG, regasified this LNG, and the plan was that it will immediately, they also will allow the private sector. And that was to happen in 2016-17, now it's 23, and they have not been able to do it. That's very unfortunate. They should have let the private sector, especially the housing societies, etc., bring their own gas and sell it, so there's no circular debt, etc. And then they have to, it's very criminal that we had our own gas and we didn't price it properly. It was very cheap, LNG was expensive, so they should have tried to bring it together. I mean, if we raise a little bit of domestic price so that it becomes equivalent to international price, then our gas would have been a little, lasted longer, because it was criminally wasted because it was so cheap. We subsidize this gas to many, many units, and so when you subsidize something, people don't care. So I think that has to end, and private sector has to immediately get given this permission, because at least 4 or 5 years they've been trying, but somehow or the other, red tape, no, they didn't allow it.
Right, going back to that particular continuity of the policies of the previous government, as caretaker Prime Minister has said, when talk about the agricultural sector, there were a number of incentives which were given to this particular sector in this year's budget, and there is a Green Pakistan initiative also launched, which is likely to attract over $50 billion of investment. How crucial is the implementation of that, and what is the potential regarding enhancing the agricultural productivity and enhancing its exports also?
See, with so much funds coming in, obviously the productivity will increase substantially, because a lot of this the funding will be on modern machinery. So instead of whatever, if we produce 5 months in a certain area, it will be, we'll at least bring it somewhere near in regional level and international level. For time being, the productivity is much less. The second big problem was that there was too much wastage of water. I think they would now realize that there is, they're trying to bring, I don't remember the exact figure, but they're trying to bring huge areas which are just lying now, as a desert or something. So they want to make agriculture. So they will have to be more wiser with the use of water. And the third thing is, I think the government has been too much, as Faad has been just saying, that government unnecessarily there, procurement price and this and that and all the corruption there. Let the market find whichever, you see, if the farmer feels that this product, this garlic, if you can get more money or anything, you let them grow that, and so that they'll find export market, import market, instead of artificially trying to keep the prices down and this, that. So,
Mr. Faad, what's your understanding
Well,
of
the
this, and how important is the implementation of this Green Pakistan initiative to attract the foreign investment, particularly in the agriculture sector?
I think it's the most important thing because Pakistan, as history tells us, it's an agriculture-based country, and during these past 76 years, we actually thought of changing our own way, and we tried to invest more into towards industry than towards agriculture, and we actually where we fouled was the part where we thought we could actually produce more by doing nothing, whereas the world has actually increased their per acre yield in hectares now. And if we see the differences between the traditional farming that we have in Pakistan and in our neighboring countries, it's alarming. The figures are alarming because we're way far behind than what people are doing in the world. See, we have to understand that all the commodities that Pakistan was actually producing and self-sufficient in is now dependent. Now we have to import those commodities. Sugar is one part where we're still in, I would say, surplus, but all the other parts were,
So, Mr. Faad, very quickly, the last comment: how can we learn from the Chinese experiences? Pakistan and China are both set to collaborate under the revitalization of CPAC, particularly in agriculture sector. What's there for Pakistan to learn from that experience?
Well, we have to understand, our mistakes that we have done in the past. So especially the Chinese, they've learned very quick. And I think Pakistan should trail behind. Even copying the Chinese wouldn't hurt us because, that's a proven model. So we don't have to do our own experiments anymore. I think, we just stick to the plan. We just copy the plan right. There's a saying, copy it right, but do it right.
Mr. Faad Waheed, Senior Vice President, Islamabad Chamber of Commerce and Industry, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. And Dr. Manzoor, Ahmad Trade, Arbitrator, World Trade Organization, thank you very much for your time. Also for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.